Senate Bill 283, relating exposure to radiation in schools in this state and declaring emergency.
Senator Lori Moss-Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. President. I call this Senate Bill 283 my Wi-Fi bill. We in the United States are behind in examining the health effects of Wi-Fi, and Oregon will be taking a small step in this direction if we pass this bill. Around the world, many countries have stopped using Wi-Fi and started looking into the health effects caused by this technology. Is it an extreme to stop using Wi-Fi? Well, I hope not, because I certainly use Wi-Fi. I don't have enough information, though, to say that. But we can't keep our heads in the sand and pretend that maybe nothing is wrong. We need to do our due diligence to see if exposure to Wi-Fi could be harming kids in schools as well as in the rest of society. Did you know that children in schools are exposed for 7 hours each day to high-frequency pulse-modulated microwave radiation and from high signal power output wireless routers, laptops, tablets, smartboards, and cell phones? Exposure to Wi-Fi has left some children, not many, but some children and teachers already suffering from microwave sickness, and has resulted in them no longer actually to be able to attend school or work in the schools. We do know that children are more susceptible to harm than adults, and repeated exposure to microwave radiation is cumulative. Research shows that children's developing brains, eyes, and bone marrow absorb this radiation 3 to 10 times deeper than adults. The United States National Toxicology Program recently completed 10 studies, and they released these findings, which concluded that there is a clear evidence of cancer and DNA damage from exposure to radio frequency radiation. And back in 2011, the World Health Organization classified microwave radiation from all wireless devices, including Wi-Fi, a Class B possible carcinogen. Be that as it may, we know that powerful industries in this country have a vested interest in leading the public to believe that electromagnetic frequency or electromagnetic radiation are harmless because we cannot see it, taste it, or touch it. Industry's reach carries over into government regulatory agencies also. Many high-profile health advocacy organizations and public policy makers are being influenced by money from these industries. This has resulted in a climate where legislation on behalf of public health and child safety is virtually non-existent in the U.S., while many other countries have already started taking and are taking action. For many years, hundreds of scientists, medical professionals, and health researchers have been studying the biological effect of microwave radiation. And these include, but are not limited to, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the European Parliament, the governments of France, Germany, Cyprus, Bavaria, the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, the California Medical Association, and doctors from Harvard, Yale, and Columbia universities, even teachers' unions and PTA groups. One router manufacturing company warns in their safety information to keep electromagnetic frequency as low as possible. You should not place the router in rooms where children sleep or where people frequent because of the integrated antennas that emit and receive electromagnetic waves. The aim is to keep the exposure to radiation as low as possible. You know that right now there are many, or maybe most, I don't know if all, commercial liability insurance firms no longer insure policyholders for harm coming from microwave radiation. The disclaimer is even in the policy held by the Portland Public Schools, issued by their insurance, which reads, "Will not reimburse for cost of expense arising directly or indirectly out of, resulting from, caused, or contributed to by electromagnetic radiation, provided that such loss, cost, or expense result from or are contributed to by the hazardous properties of electromagnetic radiation." This includes any cost for the actual or threatened abatement, mitigation, or removal. So, and in addition to the risk of harm to children and others, the lack of insurance coverage basically leaves local school boards and state government liable for lawsuits. Despite media reports, parent advocacy, informed school board members, rapidly accelerating numbers of scientific studies and international appeals by scientists and medical professionals, there has been no effort made by the Department of Ed, Department of Health, school boards, school superintendents, school safety officials, or the political establishment to protect children, teachers, and others from harm relating to wireless technology. We really do need to start informing students, teachers, parents, and school employees of the manufacturer's safety information, which they have when you buy that equipment, it is included with every wireless device that warns users to keep tablets, laptops, cell phones, and wireless routers away from their bodies. Maryland is the first state to implement a plan in the United States to look at how Wi-Fi is affecting people. And I hope you look at a couple of the floor letters that are on your desk. So this is what the bill does. All it does, it requires the Oregon Health Authority to review scientific studies regarding the health effects of exposure to microwave radiation from the use of wireless network technologies in schools. And then the bill also requires the Oregon Department of Education to develop recommendations for schools that would reduce, not eliminate, but would reduce the students' exposure to the types of microwave radiation that might be harmful. So as a former public health nurse, I know that I've been made fun of for having this bill, but I really think it is important to look at technology advancements from a public health perspective, and I urge an aye vote.
Discussion. Senator Monos Anderson, any final remarks? Question now read upon third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 283B. Those in favor of the bill is passed. Those opposed, no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Burdick. Dembro. Fagan. Frederick. Gelser. Girard. Golden. Hansel. Hass. Hurd. Johnson. Knope. Linthicum. Manning. Monos Anderson. Olson. Przonski. Riley. Roblin. Steiner Hayward. Taylor. Thatcher. Thompson. Wagner. Bertschiger. Bentz. Byer.
Record.
My name is Lucia, as you said. Hi, I'm from Eugene, and I'm 14 years old. I kind of just wrote some brief summary of what happened to me.
Sure.
So I started feeling really sick when I was 9 in 4th grade. At school, I would sometimes feel dizzy, and my papers I was writing on would seem to move back and forth. At bedtime, I'd be scared to go to bed because once I lied down to sleep, I would get very, very nauseous, and sometimes I would even vomit. I developed horrible anxiety and a rash on my face, which I sometimes still get when I'm around Wi-Fi too much. My family took me to at least 7 doctors that I can remember, maybe more, including Dornbecker Children's Hospital. Each doctor referred us to another doctor or diagnosed me with this or that and would give me some medicine, but none of them really helped much. For a whole year, I was ill and we couldn't figure out why. When my mom finally realized what was making me sick, she asked my school if they had Wi-Fi, and they replied, yes, Wi-Fi is available. So it turns out I was sitting right underneath the new Wi-Fi router they had installed. I switched schools to the only school in Eugene that doesn't have Wi-Fi, which is Waldorf. And this school only goes through 8th grade, and I'll be graduating this spring. So now we don't really know of anywhere I can go to high school next fall, because all of them have Wi-Fi. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for your testimony. It means a lot.
He was involved by CHOOP that confirmed a rate of increase of cancer of almost 4 following exposure to this radiation. Ripaccioli in 1997 also confirmed an increase in cancer in animals. Lerchel in 2015 in mice, again, at levels that are only 10% of those that are allowed by the Federal Communications Commission, confirmed an increase in cancers. And very recently, we have had two studies, one by the Ramazzini Institute in Bologna, Italy, that confirmed that radiation from Wi-Fi was carcinogenic, and finally, research from the National Toxicology Program in North Carolina that confirmed that cell phone radiation is carcinogenic. Now, the NTP is a part of the US government, and it is considered in the United States as the best institution to carry out such tests. So we have had historically a succession of large, costly animal studies, and the NTP study cost $28 million, was carried out over 10 years. So I submit that this is very serious research. And what this research is telling us right now, from the advice of a total of 4,288 rats and 2,180 mice, that this radiation increases cancer at the FCC limits that are currently in force. So this is very embarrassing because our government apparently has been supporting a standard that is, it seems, wrong according to animal data. How can this be possible? If we look back in history, we can understand exactly what happened. This standard that is currently upheld by the FCC was actually solidified in 1966 by a committee. And this committee was composed of 10 members from the armed services, one from the Petroleum Institute, one from Space Administration, one from General Dynamics, one from the US Treasury, and a single person from the United States Public Health Service. What this means is that there was a very heavy influence of industry in developing a standard that would allow commercial development of a lot of wireless applications.
Dr. Roux, just real quick, Senator Monis-Anderson is here. Would it be possible to actually just pause your testimony for a moment?
Sure.
Allow her to be able to provide testimony on both the bills that she has up for sponsorship, because she actually has to get back to her committee. Is that all right, Senator?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, let me quickly open Senate Bill 282 alongside Senate Bill 283. And Senator Monis-Anderson, Dr. Roux, I really appreciate your lenience here.
I'm State Senator Lori Monis-Anderson, and I am a retired public health nurse, and so public health is extremely important to me. And I want to, the reason I'm really interested in these bills is for the potential risk radiation has on individuals from exposure to the technologies that we have. Representative Kennedy Geyer, she's in surgery right now. Our prayers are with her right now. And I have spent a lot of time on this topic, and hopefully the committee will look favorably on having evidence-based literature search on the possible risks of radiation from the many devices we now use in schools. These technologies are so new to us, and it is, I think, our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we at least look at the research. I know you're going to have these people tell you about the research, but it is our responsibility. The American Pediatric, the Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization have already said that exposure to microwave radiation from wireless devices are probable health risk. However, we as a state have not invested enough time and resources to understand the full long-term effects on our children. This is a public health concern that we should investigate now and not wait to find out later about the possible negative effects. Children in schools are exposed for 7 hours a day to high-frequency, pulse-modulated microwave radiation from the high signal power output wireless routers, their laptop computers, their iPads, their tablets, their smartboards, cell and cordless phones, and cell towers. And because of this exposure, some children and teachers actually do suffer from microwave sickness, and they actually no longer attend school or work in a school environment. I know it's small, but there are people that do that, but we don't have really, we really need to be taking a look at that. So we have become so dependent on our wireless devices. Look at, I even carry mine around with me. But as a retired public health nurse, wanting our environment to be safe and healthy, I urge you to pass these bills so that we can start looking at the possible, probable effects on our children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. Dr. Roux, thank you so much for allowing the senator to come in and put her voice on the record. And I will just say as well for the public, I have, in addition to your testimony, I have 6 people on this bill and then 3 people on the other bill, and we lose this room in about 20 or so minutes. And so if there is a way to submit written testimony and also maybe to get as many voices on the record as we possibly can, but please do continue if you wish to finish your testimony.
So this 1966 standard that was dominated by the armed forces has been sustained until today with very little change. And I submit philosophically that what is appropriate for a fighter pilot is in an F-16, an appropriate risk to be sustained, is not necessarily the same as is acceptable for your daughter in first grade school. There's a difference. There is also human evidence that cancers of the nervous system are increasing in the population in the United States. For malignant brain and central nervous tumors in American children for ages 0 to 14 between 2000 and 2010, there has been annually an increase of 0.6% per year. Those don't use very much cell phones, but in ages 15 to 19 between 2000 and 2008, it has increased annually 1% per year. So Dr. Miller of the University of Toronto, an eminent epidemiologist, believes that this is the start of an epidemic that will expand unless we stop it right now by protective measures in the schools. Why are we concerned specifically about children? Because after all, this applies to all of us, doesn't it? But the children will be exposed much longer than we will to this pulsed radiation. So there's a difference in time. Their developing tissues are much more vulnerable. This is always accepted in epidemiology. And microwaves penetrate our young brains much more effectively than adult skulls. And my colleague Claudio Fernandez from a university in Brazil will attest to the fact that this has been documented quite in detail. So they are a vulnerable population, even beyond being our future. So I think that this is a very important consideration, and I will pause here to leave my colleagues to complete.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Whoever would like to continue, please do.
David Morrison. I wanted to offer that I brought 4 boxes here of scientific studies that are independently funded studies that I would be happy to drop off at any of your offices if you still have doubt after.
I've got them all. They're on a flash drive now.
Okay.
That's plugged into my cell phone.
No.
Too soon?
Flash drive. So in the 1940s, I'm going to give a little historical precedent here. In the 1940s, tank trucks routinely sprayed children in the streets with DDT. It was considered safe. In 2010, an FDA fact sheet read, "No evidence linking cell phone use to risk of brain tumors." Fast forward to the National Toxicology Program study that Dr. Arrow was referring to, showed clear evidence of cancer from radiofrequency fields. Otis Brawley, who was then the chief medical officer of the American Cancer Society, reversed the previous position of the American Cancer Society claim of safety and said the NTP report linking radiofrequency radiation to 2 types of cancer marks a paradigm shift in our understanding of radiation and cancer risk. This is a striking example of why serious study is so important in evaluating cancer risk. And that's what this bill is looking for, is a review of this. For 17 years, California firefighters fought cell towers on fire stations due to symptoms they experienced following activation of the towers, and brain scans of the affected firefighters all showed abnormalities for the firefighters that were tested. Portland Public Schools has 7 cell towers located on school grounds. And where am I? Okay. Some children actually, well, Dr. Ero alluded to, and we have a young woman here who had to leave her school because she could not. She was sitting under a router and she became sick. There's a Swedish router manufacturing company, Telecom, that discloses in its safety manual not to place routers in rooms for children. Commercial wireless systems can expose children to the nation's highest radiation levels. Acting on advice from Portland School Senior Director of Environmental Health and Safety, Office of School Modernization, John Burnham, Portland Public School Chair Julia Brim-Edwards supports this bill and wants this bill to pass. It's no mystery why the commercial insert. So this is no longer covered by insurance. There's, in the commercial insurance policy that Portland Public Schools has, there's an explicit disclaimer for harm from microwave radiation. And this is now standard throughout the industry. So who is liable for lawsuits, the eventual lawsuits that will be coming, are the users, the people who sign the contracts. And that would be the school board would be responsible for that.
Hey, David, real quick here. Sorry to interrupt, but we have 7, 8 people left in about 10 minutes. If you want, there's written testimony. I know this is first public hearing. I didn't want to cut you off, but I just want to get as many voices as I possibly can. So really appreciate it, though.
Good afternoon. I'm Cindy Franklin from Portland, and I've been a wireless safety advocate for 10 years. I want to keep this really short because we could all go on for hours and hours, as you know.
Well, I just was going to have David start reading the boxes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I just want to emphasize what Dr. Ero was pointing out is that, you know, those who benefit financially from installing wireless routers in classrooms, they will assure you that the exposure levels are well below the FCC, the federal guidelines. And it's important to remember those guidelines were set 23 years ago based on, at the time, old science that assumed the only harm came from the heating of tissue, like from radars in the military and that type of thing. So in the last 30 years since those guidelines were adopted, there have been thousands of independent published research papers that show DNA damage, cellular oxidation, neurological damage, et cetera, at exposure levels hundreds and thousands of times below the current standards. So the honest truth is that there are no studies that show that any amount of wireless radiation is safe, especially for children and the fetuses of unborn, the unborn children of pregnant teachers, for example, in a classroom. So I'll stop there and urge your support for this bill.
Thank you so much. So we have Paul Dart, Karen Josephson, Lucilia, I'm going to say Kunha, and Karen Almquist, if we do have 4 chairs. Otherwise, we can just take them 2 by 2. So, and again, I apologize. We have a lot of bills up for consideration this legislative session. So if folks want to just tell us a little bit about who you are for the record, and if you have written testimony, all of our committee members are interested in reading it as well. So please identify yourself.
I'm Karen Josephson.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's great.
Okay, so I really thank the people who have already spoke. They have given you the heart of the thing. And I just want to kind of flesh out a little bit about the FCC. The FCC, why do they have this huge high limit? When I was going to go over the .003 microwatts per centimeter squared, what that causes. I've got a whole list here of not even up to 0.1 microwatts per meter squared. You get a lot of effects before you get to 0.1. The FCC, they don't allow 1 microwatt per meter squared, or 10, or 15, or 20, or 50, or 150 microwatts per centimeter squared. They allow 1,000 microwatts per meter squared. So they made a huge bunch of assumptions about what the human body can tolerate. We're talking way down at 0.000 something microwatts per meter squared for all the same outcomes with the health that the previous people spoke about. The reason that is because the FCC federally is a totally captured agency. And there is from the Ethics Department of Harvard, a major article about how that came about. There's a major article in The Nation titled something like How Our Cell Phone Companies Lied to Us About the Safety of Cell Phones. Cell phones, yes, they're way, way over the 1, 2, 3, 4 microwatts per meter squared. So they're a captured agency. They are run by the former telecommunications CEOs. And that's been the case even through Obama's administration. So we have a totally captured agency who is willing to lie and say everything's fine at 1,000 microwatts per centimeter squared. So we've got thousands and thousands of too much stuff going on. I carry my little, mine is a milliwatt per meter squared because I got sick from the smartphones. Palpitations all day long, found out finally what it was, got my little indicator. I know there's hardly anything. There's plenty in this room. This is what's going on in the room. This red stuff and the orange stuff, there's just too much stuff all around us. So
thank you so much.
We're stuck in it.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And if you have any written material that you want to have submitted, we can have it as part of the public record. Perfect.
Exhibits.
Yeah, that's perfect.
But actually, that was a different testimony because I changed this at the last minute because you weren't getting this.
All right, thank you.
I'm Paul Dart. I'm an MD in Eugene, Oregon. I've been practicing environmental medicine in Eugene since the late 1980s. If we're going to talk about Wi-Fi in the schools, we really need to understand first that Wi-Fi routers transmit all the time. This is a Wi-Fi router. This is an electrical meter that measures the waveforms of this kind of signal and transliterates it into a sound so you can hear the pattern of the waveform. It's directional. It's transmitting all the time. I can turn this off and stop the noise, but it doesn't stop transmitting. Wireless routers don't just speak when they're spoken to. They talk all the time, even though it's not being used by any devices. The only way to stop that is to turn it off. We've got other routers in the neighborhood, but this one will stop transmitting when it's turned off. So in the absence of a policy even to turn routers off, what you've got is constant transmission from these routers pouring into the school system, into the children, 7 hours a day. And none of this has ever been proven to be safe. The manufacturers didn't test this before they put it out there. So what we're talking about is that our school children, in the middle of a vast biological experiment, to see what happens to them when we increase their exposure all day long in the schools. They didn't volunteer for this experiment. They have not received informed consent for this experiment. They're legally required to be in the school system. Now, I've got a DVD here that has the AV presentation that I would have given you if I thought I had time, and mercifully, I don't here. But I have plenty of information, and I've got a handout of my testimony that discusses the different pieces of evidence I'm giving you, and my suggestions for if you want to dig into it, what sequence to do it in.
That's great, and we really appreciate having that as part of the public record, too. I know this is just an initial conversation.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Dr. Dart. So we do have Lucia Kunha, Karen Almquist. Is that everybody then, I think, who wants to testify on 283? Okay. All right, please just identify yourself for the record.
And I'm her mother, and I've submitted written testimony, so you can read in detail more about what Lucia said and my perspective. And so I won't take the time to read it, but I wanted to add something here that I think I feel strongly that parents should be made aware of the potential health risks of exposure, to the laptops, the Wi-Fi routers, etc. And also, importantly, families should have choices within the public school system. For example, there should be one school in every district without wireless technologies that maintain instead wired connections like we used to have. Or at the very least, there should be a wing of the school without any wireless. France in 2015 passed a national law that instructs elementary schools to keep the Wi-Fi routers off, except when they're being used for pedagogical purposes. That's another option. So there are things we can do without, getting rid of the technology.
Seems like those would be things that, working with Senator Monis Anderson on a study, would be encouraged to have conversation.
Absolutely.
Could you just tell us for the record as well your name?
Sorry, my name is Karen Preston. I'm from Eugene.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We do have Senator Monis Anderson who wants to speak to an amendment, and the last folks I have signed up to testify, both on 283 and 282, are Angelina Ray Kugler and Deb Mayer. I think that was everyone that I had as listed to testify.
Chair and members of the committee and Lori Monis Anderson, I'm sorry I didn't mention this before, but we do have the amendments which will turn this into a study, and actually I had talked with OHA. We may have another amendment. It would OHA said they will find and compensate write a literature review focused on health effects of wireless communication technology and provide the literature review to us. And then they have a timeline for us, and so it would need to go to Ways and Means to have this study done.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Senator. And this is our last two folks to testify. If senators do pop up and have to run out the door, just know that they're off to other committees. I'll try to hold this room for another 5 minutes or so. So feel free to take your time, identify who you are for the record, and give us a little bit about your perspective.
My name is Angelica Ray Kugler, and I'm a citizen from Corvallis, and I was a teacher at one time. For 10 years, I taught high school, and everything has been said that I was going to say, so I'm just going to cut it short and say I'm so appreciative of your time for listening, and please do what Senator Anderson said, the fiduciary responsibility to do the research. I didn't bring boxes for
That's pretty impressive, I have to say.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I urge you please to support these bills.
Thank you.
Senate Bill 282, 283.
Thank you.
Oh, should I wait?
You can sit or, just identify yourself.
I wanted you to have a picture. You have it. Thank you.
Oh, yes. I've got it right here. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So I'm going to do a little demonstration, but this won't take very long at all. So.
Okay.
Okay. So bear with me.
Is there anything we need to do to participate in the experiment here?
Maybe want to shoot your eyes for a minute. I'll try to make it as painless as possible. Hey, my name is Deb Mayer. I represent parents across America for safe technology in support of Senate Bill 282, having to do with screen time limits and screen devices at school. Chair Wagner and members of the committee, I want to begin by saying we are not against the use of computer technology at school. We are for the safe, sensible use of computer technology in classrooms. As more curricula is being taught online, we want to make sure kids are safe while doing lessons in this way. I want to direct your attention to the article from the Oregonian and ask that you indulge me in a simulation of a device that's featured in that article. The BrainCo headband allows the teacher to know who is focusing on the lesson. This is not the thing, but it has a light on it like this. Can you see?
Oh, yeah.
All right. I'm not going to subject you to that for very long.
But I just
want
with David.
I want you to say, I just wanted you to get a visual for what this thing is. So it's supposed to enable the teacher to see who's focusing in class. So now imagine that you have a class of 25 to 35 students wearing this thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. With this device, students are being monitored electronically, even though they're not online. Supposedly, the teacher can tell who is focused by observing the light emanating from this headgear. So what we're asking, but unlike this, which is just battery operated, we're asking kids to wrap their brains with a radiation emanating device. This has not been tested for safety, and just like every other digital device used in a classroom, which haven't been tested for safety either. What you won't find in the Oregonian or on radio or TV is information about the health risk posed by overexposure to devices. Even though we have implored the media to cover this issue, they have not. We have a crisis in classrooms across the state. We are witnessing behaviors in children, including screaming uncontrollably, violently throwing furniture across the room, and abusing educators. This is not normal. We must look deeper for causes. Overexposure to devices should not be dismissed as a cause. Also, requiring kids to do homework online extends screen time and presents equity problems as well, but that's a whole nother issue. This bill asks for a study to determine how much online use is safe. We're asking that parents be informed and give consent, that time away from devices be given priority as well, that data collected from online activity be minimal and data privacy assured. We are asking that parents have options to this type of learning. Since the product manufacturers and the media have refused to inform parents of the risk, it is up to us, it's up to you, to protect our children at school. So I'm asking this deliberative body to focus on doing what's best for the health, safety, and education of Oregon's children.
Great. Thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and allowing us to.
Can you all see? Do you have food off?
Yeah, I know. I'm just recovering. Thank you, Deb, wherever you are. For everyone for hanging in there. I really appreciate everybody who traveled so far, the incredible research that's come of this, and Senator Monis Anderson's passion for leading the discussion with her value on public health. With that, is there any comments from members on those two bills? Okay, we're going to close public hearing on Senate Bill 282, close public hearing on Senate Bill 283.